Hey, good morning. Today is another one of our first fives. Today's passage is from John chapter 8. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's one of my favorite stories in the New Testament. And the reason it's one of my favorite stories is because it shows us the character and nature of Jesus, which ultimately shows us the character and nature of God. And so when I read this story every single time, I can't help but see myself in the story. And here it is. Then each of them went home while Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and making her stand before all of them, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" They said this to test him, so that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And once again, he bent down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, sir." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go your way, and from now on, do not sin again." Now, I just said I saw myself in this story, and you're probably thinking, but you're not a woman. You're right. I'm not talking about just in that role. I'm talking about how often I might have been one of those people in the crowd who sees someone in the act of doing something, and in my righteous indignation, I speak up and I speak out. Now, the truth is, I probably have been a woman, maybe not caught in adultery, but probably caught in enough other stuff, my own sin. And so every time I read this story, I think about all that's going on in the background of this story. See these people who brought this woman to Jesus. If she was caught in the very act of adultery, what were they doing in someone's house? If she was caught in the very act of adultery, what were they doing walking in on that? If she's caught in the very act of adultery, there's all kinds of pictures you can go there and all kinds of things that probably aren't good. And where's the man who was a part of this? He wasn't there. He didn't do anything wrong, just her. So there's all these things that factor into this story. And then it shows Jesus writing in the ground, and there's all kinds of myths and questions about what he's writing. And some will say, well, he was writing the sins of those who had gathered around. He was writing their names and their sins. I don't really know, and I don't really care. And to be honest with you, this is one of the stories that in the New Testament, there's some question about whether it wasn't there in the earliest manuscripts and it showed up later, but it's a story that does fit the character of Jesus because we see it all throughout the New Testament. What we do see in this story are a couple simple things that I think are really important for us. We see this woman who's vulnerable, who's been maybe taken advantage of. We don't really know. Either way, she's ashamed. She's been caught in something she knows she shouldn't be doing. And when everyone else is ready to throw stones at her and point out her flaws and her sin, Jesus stops them by asking this question: "Are you without sin? If so, please go right ahead." And so he starts with the oldest first, and the elder, I often kept thinking, it doesn't mean old person, it means someone who's wise. And wisdom sometimes comes with age and sometimes doesn't, but wisdom here is a simple thing for us to see. The wisest among them recognized that they were not without sin, and they too could have found themselves in the same position. As though Jesus extends grace to this woman, and then when the woman's left there, this is the thing about God, he doesn't leave us where he finds us. And so she may have been found in adultery, found in this compromising position, found in a way of life in which she didn't want to be living or shouldn't be living. Maybe she even wanted to be there. But what we know is this: Jesus says to her, "Well, here, I don't condemn you either, but go and sin no more." In other words, you're forgiven for what has happened, but you don't have to continue to live this life. See, this is the good news of God, that we don't have to continue living lives we've lived in the past, that we don't have to be defined by our past transgressions, by our past sins. And the other part of the story for us to recognize is sometimes, if we're not careful, we're really quick to point out the flaw in someone else's life or someone else's sin and not look at our own. And so here's the challenge for you and I. Let's make sure we're always approaching things with the right heart. And let's never forget that the grace of God seen in Jesus here is the grace of God we're called to extend. So may you and I be people who extend grace and extend love and invite people into new ways of living. And this is the hope for us, that Jesus does that for her, he does it for us, and we're called to do it for others. May your day be filled with God's grace and his peace and his love. We'll catch you next time for another First Five.